Welcome back. This is segment 2 being filmed on Tuesday, February 23rd, 2016. Our guest in this segment is Sid Tafler. Welcome, Sid. And you've been working for a while, for I think you said a year, on an issue of a development in the Cook Street Village. And what you want to talk about is how do people get involved in these major issues that are happening in our community?
Yeah. Well, Jack, it's part of city policy, citizen engagement or citizen involvement. It's not discretionary. In other words, the city says we want people to be involved in every decision. And so when a new proposal came forward for the Cook Street Village, and this is a sensitive area that's been debated and discussed in Fairfield and other parts of the city for probably 40 years, I wanted to get involved. I have some background because as a journalist, I actually did a fair bit of work covering City Hall in Victoria, also in Calgary. And so what I found was a tremendous amount of complexity. I guess that's to be understood because it's to do with what is allowed to be built in our city and what isn't. So one of the major documents is this thing called the Official Community Plan. You can see it's well worn, well thumbed. Belongs to a friend of mine named Ken. It's 200 and odd pages or more, 260 pages. So that was the first thing because we were told that this is kind of the Bible and everything has to fit into these parameters. So simple answer is it's a lot for a layman and even a lot for somebody with some background to try to grasp what are the issues and what involvement is acceptable and how we can state our case to the city.
But the basic question should be, what do people want? Does that come into play somewhere?
It does, yes. And I think what we wanted mostly in this was we wanted a community hearing. We, the neighbors of this area, wanted the developer to come and speak to us. And there had been a community hearing early in the process, but there was very little notice and very few people knew about it. So we wanted to have a community hearing in which everybody could be heard. That would be one step of the process. So I would say we fought for that for most of a year, and finally we had our community meeting in December of last year. And I think what's interesting or instructive about that process is you think this is a chance where the community is sitting down, the developers in the same room, and there'd be some give and take, but that certainly wasn't the process. Some 60 people spoke. The proponent or the developer answered very few questions. And then when he went back to the city in February, I think it was late January, none of the proposals of the dozens and dozens that were presented to him, some were small, some were big, none of them were incorporated in his plan. As if to say, well, we've given you your hearing, but it doesn't really matter because the developer may or may not accede to any of the requests we made.
And are those the rules, that the developer can do whatever they want within some guidelines or regulations?
They can do whatever they want, but obviously, the city may or may not agree with whatever.
So the city can approve or disapprove?
The city can approve or disapprove, but I want to tell you the city of Victoria is very pro-development, very pro-growth. And there are reasons for that. I suppose the city doesn't want to get minimized in the region, the city of Victoria, where all the growth is going to other areas. There's tax considerations and so on. Anyway, I think we may have an image of the development as proposed and to sort of contrast with what the streetscape would look like now. Because right now, you've got not low income, but affordable housing right in the Cook Street Village. And I think it's a great idea that the people who bag the groceries or make the coffee when you go patronize stores in the village might actually be able to live in the area. And I think what's proposed won't be anywhere near affordable. So it's strange in a way when we have this housing crisis, some people have to sleep on the street. If there's 12 affordable units in a desirable area of town and they're going to be demolished, they don't get replaced. And there's something a little off base to me about that. And I don't know whether it's fair to say a developer, you must replace these 12 units, but they won't be replaced. They won't be the affordable housing we have now in those units.
So can you just briefly, what's being built or proposed there?
Well, it's a 6-story condominium and retail development at Cook and Oliphant. in the midst of the Cook Street Village. I might say that the Cook Street Village has been recognized as a special area in Victoria, not just by residents, but by the province. It's called a development permit area, and also by the city. So we're supposed to be very careful with what they build there. And actually, some of the phrasing is the official community plan, this document here, it calls for development that enhances the quality of place. And the Cook Street Village Guidelines, which were passed some years ago but are incorporated in this document, talks about redevelopment should respond to the area's established domestic character and scale. So these are guidelines, they're not law, but still you'd think that there'd be some emphasis on trying to meet those guidelines. Does this meet with the current?
Actually, I wouldn't think that. I used to think that,
used to
but
think that,
you know,
yeah.
having been through it, I know. So, what's happened? Has approval been granted, or I don't know where this stands at all.
At this point right now, the city had a meeting. They have their own sort of planning committee within the city, and there was a fair bit of doubt expressed about the proposal as it stands. Some in favor, though, and looked to be like it could be really close if it came to a vote. And it would have come to a vote probably this month, but the developer chose to take it out of consideration in the short term and come up with some refinements. We'll have to see what those refinements are.
That sounds like exactly what happened in very close to the neighborhood where I live.
Is that North Park?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that one as well. And the interesting thing was, as I recall, in North Park, the mayor said one reason she voted...
I'm talking about St. Andrew's School.
Yeah, that's right, St. Andrew's School in North Park, yeah. One reason she voted in favor of this development was that the parameters of it fit within the current neighborhood plan. That's what she said. That's why she voted in favor of it. This development does not in any way fit within the parameters of our current neighborhood plan.
Yeah, I'm not sure that one did either, but
well, okay, that was her argument.
certainly
anyway.
not what the neighbors wanted at the time.
That was her argument. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So where does Lisa Help stand? I mean, I've heard she's very pro-development.
Well, yes, she tends to be, as far as I know, and I would say that in defense, we have growth. That seems to be the reality of it. We have a tremendous amount of redevelopment right now in Fairfield, many rezonings, mostly for smaller developments than this. And most of them don't really get a lot of objection because they're things like a basement suite or perhaps a small redevelopment in a lot. But this particular proposal, my impression is, because the official community plan indicates they can have up to approximately 6 stories, that's very vague language, up to approximately 6 stories, I think the developer was encouraged to apply for such a large building with a lot of bulk and a lot of mass. And there are other things in the official community plan, such as green building, fitting into the existing neighborhood, that this building doesn't do at all. It's almost like cherry picking. It's almost like driving down the street with your seatbelt on and saying, I'm legal, and then the cop stops you and says, well, but you've been drinking, you don't have a license, and so on. You meet only one parameter of what's safe driving, and you don't meet the other. So this meets the one parameter, the one that is advantageous development, up to approximately 6 stories. It doesn't meet the other parameters of our official community plan.
And can you just repeat them again?
Pardon me?
What are the other parameters?
Well, there's quite a few. As I say, the thing is 260 pages long.
Yeah.
But the official community plan talks about sustainable building and environmental practices, things like green roof, rainwater management, waste retention, even electrical charging stations. We have an aging population, especially Fairfield, and no electrical charging stations for, let's say, scooters that elderly people use, or even electric cars where we're going to have in the future. It also has commercial floor.
You know, it's too bad that our neighborhoods are planned really by developers. I mean, what I think should happen really is that the community should plan itself, and then you bring in the builder to do what you want. But somehow it's very often a national or Vancouver-based operation comes in, and all they see is a way to make the most money they can. I mean, that's how the business works. So they come into the neighborhoods and they do what they want. And our city council always seems to go along with it. I mean, look what they've done to Vancouver. It's a, you know, my goodness. And Victoria's next.
Yeah, I think the theory is that there is some consideration for that, in that we, the community, will get to write a local area plan, and in general terms say what we want and don't want. The problem is those things don't carry the weight of law. And even now, the city seems to be saying this official community plan, which comes as a surprise to a lot of people, trumps everything else, because we have local area plans from the past, which should get due consideration. That's the problem. You're right. And in a sense, the neighborhood does get to plan its community, but the city doesn't necessarily give it equal weight with other considerations. And we're all about growth now, which is strange in this time of environmental consciousness and global warming.
Well, we're all about making money for some people. You know, that seems to be what it's all about.
Yeah. That's the system we have in terms of housing in our society. And I think in the past, some of these things were balanced by government involvement, both the federal, provincial level. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why we see people very underhoused in the society now, because some of those countervailing measures aren't there.
To me, the private sector has allowed, or, I mean, what's been created is a shortage of housing. You know, with the government not in the process, the big companies. I mean, if you can sell a condo for $400,000 as they're selling now, why sell it for $100,000 as it was selling for a few years ago? You know, so there's a shortage of housing. At the bottom, the homeless, the poorest are pushed out completely, and everybody else pays.
Especially a shortage of affordable housing, because I think if you went to downtown Victoria and you had enough money, or anywhere in Victoria, you could buy something. And in many cases, I think we see this all over the world in cities with desirable areas. Right. It's called ghost units. Yeah. They're purchased, they're nice, but they're empty because they're just investment models.
Sid, we're out of time. Thank you very much for doing it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And you know, neighborhood by neighborhood, we get attacked and picked off. Thanks for watching.